money's like a bar of soap. The more you rub it, the smaller it gets. So my theory is, let's collect more soap.
Hello. Welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur or innovator every single Wednesday morning who's turning wild ideas into wild growth. I'm your host, Max Branstetter, founder and podcast producer at MaxPodcasting, and you can reach me at max@maxpodcasting.com to save time with your high-quality podcast. This is episode 140, and today's guest is Winnie Sun. Winnie is an award-winning financial advisor who also plays one on TV. She is one of the most influential and followed financial advisors out there, and she has contributed to everything from Forbes to pretty much every major TV network out there to lots of other really cool things. Her tweet chat, #WinnieSun, has produced over 25 billion with a B, impressions on Twitter. And she is the founder of Sun Group Wealth Partners. In this episode, we talked about finance tips for entrepreneurs, including some key things you need to keep in mind when you're looking at investing, spending, etc., yada, yada, yada. Winnie knows her stuff, and she also has an incredible story and a fascinating career. The sun will come up today. Enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Winnie Sun, the wealth whisperer herself, just absolute magician when it comes to finance, entrepreneurship, managing your money, etc. Winnie, how you doing? Thanks for joining today.
Thanks for having me, Max. How are you?
I'm doing great. We've been connected for a long time. I think I'm your only connection on social media. So, this is really cool. Definitely, we're going to get into finance. We're going to get into kind of finance tips for entrepreneurs. Before we get into that, you had a pretty cool and unique role in shows like America's Funniest Home Videos and Judge Judy and Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, in terms of actually like physically building the audience, in-person audience for that. Can you shed some light on that time of your life?
Absolutely. So, that was a long time ago it kind of goes way back to why I'm in finance even, because about 3 months prior to starting college, I was actually really excited to go. My parents actually pulled me aside and shared with me that although they were really proud of me for getting into all these great colleges, but financially they had invested in a real estate project with some friends that went sour. And so 3 months prior to starting college, they actually had to declare bankruptcy, which really put me in a pickle because not only, was I concerned about starting afresh and meeting new people, but I was really concerned about helping my mom keep the house because my dad was going through a lot. He felt so stressed out that he had failed. He felt like he failed his family. And so my mom had to make sure that we could financially survive. And I was leaving, to go to college. So I got a job. One of my earliest jobs was working on a show called Jones and Jury. I was supposed to do legal research because I was thinking in an Asian family, you pretty much 3 career choices, right? Your Asian family, you're allowed to be a doctor, an engineer, or an attorney. Of the 3, I thought, well, maybe, law would be the best of the 3. So I got myself a job doing legal research on a show called Jones and Jury. So as soon as I went there, the first day, they said, well, we don't have any legal research for you to do today. So UCLA, you're going to go ahead and help with the audience. And I said, okay. They named me a page, which is a really very glamorous position, Max, in case you don't know. That means you get to walk people to and from the audience and to and from the restroom, and you get to collect gum in between. So actually,
when you mentioned restroom and then you mentioned that you were collecting something, I had no idea where that was going.
I know. I mean, I had to keep you on your toes there. So, but yeah, so I did that. I did that for weeks. And then one day, one of the producers said, you're really good at being a page. I said, thank you. I'm really grateful to be here and this and that. And they said, we'll give you an extra $1 an hour. And this was like, I would make $7 an hour now. I would make you head page. And while the audience producer goes on medical leave. And I said, oh, yes, that's awesome. I'll do it. And that's really the beginning. And eventually from there, I was given the opportunity to start filling audiences for other major television shows. And so I started my own business. I was, I think, 1920 at the time. And in my college apartment, I started a television audience production company. We became the second largest in the United States. I was filling thousands of seats every single week, and including America's Funniest Home Videos and Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy, Judge Judy, and many of the MTV pilots and a lot of news show pilots and Regis and Kathy Lee when they came to LA. So it was pretty cool. That was back then, and that was really my first really successful business. That was in. Gotta hustle.
Exactly. That's what I always say. I might get that tattooed, but it's really cool to hear about kind of how you got your start. And what's interesting is when you look at your career, I mean, you've had great success in the worlds of TV. I almost said TV land, not specifically on TV land, but maybe there as well. On TV, as well as in the finance world and the entrepreneurship world. What is it about finance that kind of kept drawing you in to the point that, I could be a real thought leader in this space?
Well, the financial industry never caught my attention. I kind of landed in it accidentally because I felt like my parents who immigrated from Taiwan, that they didn't have the best financial sense. Like they were amazing savers. Don't get me wrong. They would save like nobody's business, but they weren't great on growing the money. And so I thought during that time I should, get some experience in there. So I started at night and took classes at night as UCLA in financial planning. And then it was actually the dean of the program that pulled me aside and said I should interview at Smith Barney. And that's really how it started. And so I stuck with it and I started getting more interested in it. But the honest truth is that the career sort of found me because it was never even on my radar. I didn't know a single financial advisor. I didn't know a lot of wealthy people. Yeah, we didn't know a lot of wealthy people. And so I was sort of caught by surprise. And it was by accident. I went to a recruiting session, like hundreds of people. They look like superstars. They look like models, Max. Like I was like, okay, this is not going to work out. Thank goodness I have a job in TV because nobody in their right mind would hire me here. But everybody left and they kept me and they said, young lady, they asked me about my TV career, what I did and all that. And they said, we're not letting you leave this room until you sign with us. And that's really how it started. I didn't know much about it. All I knew is, well, mom's going to be happy now. I'm not working in television anymore. And so I put on a suit, started working at Smith Barney, learned what it meant to be a financial advisor at that point. And I stuck with it because of the people, not so much my colleagues, because to be honest with you, the financial industry is not always the attractor of the nicest humans on the planet. But my clients were so nice and they loved me and I loved them so much. And even to this day, I have clients that have been with me 3 generations. They're like my family. And I felt like I was very much the oddball. And many times my clients would be oddballs like me. Like we weren't supposed to be, I wasn't supposed to necessarily be in the financial industry. My clients maybe weren't really supposed to find an advisor like me. I just wanted to make sure that whoever worked with me felt very safe and comfortable. So now it's been 20 plus years, still doing it.
Look back now, you have built an incredible business and Sun Group Wealth Partners. What was the most challenging part of your entrepreneurship journey?
Sort of always questioning whether or not this was the place for me. Even at a very young age, I remember 9 years old, 10 years old, in high school and junior high, like I've always sort of had side small businesses for myself because my parents were always entrepreneurs. And so when I worked at a large company, although I was very good at my job at these large firms, as a financial advisor, I did very well very quickly and I continued to do well. But I always felt like, I don't know that I belong here like the other financial advisors, and I have nothing in common, right? The manager doesn't really know me that well. I just felt like always it wasn't quite that fit. And so once, Morgan Stanley bought out Smith Barney quite a few years ago, like 2011. And at that point I said, I want to leave and start our own firm. And so my business partner and I, we built it in a way that excites me. So I said, we want to build a place where everybody from every walk of life will walk in and feel welcome and feel safe and feel like they belong. That was my goal. And I feel like we've accomplished that. Everybody that walks in just like, I love this place, but it doesn't feel like a financial firm. I said, exactly. That's exactly it. So now, I've been doing this so long, I try to do things that make me happy more than anything. That's really sort of my pursuit these days. It's just doing things that make me happy and make me feel like I'm reaching my full potential.
I think that's a great lesson no matter what you're doing, whether you're in finance or whether you're, doing something that has nothing to do with business. If you do stuff that excites you, if you do stuff that makes you happy, like that's a really, really good way to go about life. How did you find out what truly actually does excite you and makes you happy?
I think you know what makes you happy when you do a lot of things that don't make you happy. Why I say that is I loved meeting people. I loved meeting clients. I loved all that, the relationship part of it and managing their money. And I knew I was really good. I still am really, really good at managing money. And so that's why my clients loved me, but it wasn't just because of the money, but because they knew that I cared for them and where the heart was. But there's also so many elements about business and every type of business. There's things that you can't control, but you have to figure out at the core of it, what is it that you want to do and pursue it with so much energy that it makes sense. Like it got to a point where I turned to my business partner, goodness, almost a decade ago. And I said, I feel like this business doesn't excite me anymore. And it's missing something. And if I continue like this, I'm going to stop doing it because I know that I'm good, really good at making businesses profitable. I'm really good at anything I commit myself to. And I'm getting tired and exhausted of this, all this negative energy. And he says, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I feel like I want to move towards social media, do more branding, talk about our business, talk about why our clients love us. If they could just see, if I could just jar up how our clients feel about us, we wouldn't have to work so hard to convince people to take a meeting with us because we're really good. But the Madoffs of the world and Lehman Brothers of the world, they're telling our story of why our industry, they think that we're criminals. When I get introduced to people and they find out I'm a financial advisor, nobody wants to hang out with me or talk to me.
Yeah, I got to go. Sorry, Winnie.
I know. I'm not surprised because that's what people really would do. Yeah, like it's called advisor stink. Ooh, you gotta go.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's great. So that's an incredible segue. So let's talk about finance. You are obviously very good at managing your money. When you think about entrepreneurs and when you're starting a business or working on growing your business, there's obviously huge financial decisions that you need to make from an overall strategy kind of standpoint or an overall approach to looking at money as an entrepreneur. What are some key things that are extremely important to keep in mind when you are making financial decisions as an entrepreneur?
Tax shelter is everything. So when you're an entrepreneur, pay yourself first. Make sure you get paid every single month. Otherwise, you got to reassess your business profile or your business strategy and make sure that you put aside something into something tax sheltered that grows ideally tax sheltered or tax free every single month. Like you don't skip a beat. If you can't do that, then you need to find a way to do that soon. It can't be 6 months or a year from now.
And what are some examples of tax shelters?
So like my favorite is I call it my golden egg, and that's the Roth IRA. So the Roth IRA is something that everybody can do. It's called the individual retirement account. Now, many of you listening might not qualify to go directly into a Roth IRA, but you can add into a traditional IRA. You could talk to a financial advisor, accountant, see if a Roth IRA conversion is an option. If you're self-employed, set up a SEP IRA or set up a pension. There's all these different savings vehicles that allow you to put aside money for future retirement. And so you need to make sure you do that. One of the big blessings in my life is when I started my television company, audience production company, right in the beginning, we were making money. I think I was 19 years old. And the accountant who helped me with our corporate taxes, I remember him telling me, he's like, get your booty over to the bank and open up an IRA. And you need to do that. And it was literally the best advice because I consistently added to my IRA. And it got to a point where one day I was sitting and looking at my accounts and I'm in my 30s. I'm like, wow, I could actually retire soon. That's craziness, right? And so I want every entrepreneur to have that feeling of knowing when you can retire, having the option to be able to retire, but making sure that you make that a priority. It's not so much about becoming the most famous person or having the most followers. It's the person who has the most financial liberty to make that decision. That's really, I think, gives you freedom and happiness.
And shout out my great grandpa Ira, who obviously lived a
Oh,
long time ago, but his name is literally Ira. So he was born into, I think, I always think
so
of that now. What
Ira.
do you say? But that's a great tip. I think so many people, one of the lessons that I learned kind of early on from my dad, who's an entrepreneur as well, was that so many people don't start saving or putting away and kind of taking a chunk of whatever they're making and storing that for later, or investing that for later. Whatever you can do, especially if you're someone who's like recently graduated college or kind of earlier in your career, the earlier you start doing something like that, just the better it bodes for you long term. And you don't need to take like your entire paycheck and put it away, but a little bit goes a long way over time. I think that's spot on. On the flip side, what's something more, we'll call it short to medium term, that you see entrepreneurs struggle with in terms of finance?
Short term, a lot of times we feel like we're chasing something, whether it be chasing other people, and everybody's trying everything, and I need to try everything too, and we end up spending all this money too quickly. One thing I would say that's always been good for, at least for my businesses, have always been, I always call them micro entrepreneurship, meaning that like one of my first businesses in high school was I started a tutoring agency, right? And the only thing I paid for was I bought neon printing paper, and then I would cut little and made little business cards for myself. And then when I started a television audience production company, the only thing I bought was a used fax machine from Staples. I think the key thing is when you first start off is to not only relish but embrace starting on with peanuts. The least you can spend, the better. At some point, you'll be able to spend as much money as you want to, but giving yourself that chance to really thrive, you got to have the financial ability to do so. So make sure you have your little savings pool before you start.
And what's something that, when you look back at your own career, was a decision when it comes to managing money that you're incredibly thankful that you did?
Well, I'm really thankful that I became a financial advisor because I made a lot of smart decisions because I had the resources and the knowledge to do so. So, for example, before my oldest, I have three kids. Before my oldest son was born, I had already set up an education savings account for him a year prior to him being born because I knew I wanted to have kids at some point. And so by the time he reached 3.5, I was done paying for his Stanford education, which is the most expensive college in California, which is where I'm at. So this was very important to me because my parents really wanted to take care of us in terms of our education, but they couldn't. So that was sort of a big moment for me. And then this year, because of the pandemic, I did another thing. Is like my dad recently in the last year had an accident, so he's been in and out of the hospital. He's now bedbound, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
thank you. I mean, it's been rough. I mean, from going from happy go lucky, hanging out, like walking all the time and telling jokes, like just like all around cool grandpa, to all of a sudden completely changing it in one day. So what I wanted to do too is I wanted to make sure that my kids would be okay if something happened to my husband and I. So this year we became the youngest clients that I have that bought long-term care. So those are the two things, and I think they're all driven by taking care of those that you love. That's how I've sort of practiced my financialness. Is I just am always trying to protect other people. I live a pretty simple life. I should say that. I say pretty. I have to be completely honest with you, Max, because we're friends. I do have a very nice car, but but otherwise, yes, I live pretty simply.
It's okay. You can have some nice things every now and then. We'll give
There
it
you
to
go.
you. But yeah, it's true. It goes back to love. It goes back to happiness and what excites you. I know you have an incredibly busy and hectic schedule, and it's really refreshing to hear that you kind of view your life as being simple, and kind of the things that are important to you are very straightforward, which is really cool, and kind of is proof that as you grow in your careers and as you add more things and media appearances, things like that, you really can just kind of just make sure to hold on to those things that are most important to you. So obviously there's a lot of things that you've learned about money and finance throughout your career and advising people on those things. For the average person, what would you say is a good way to kind of stay in the know, stay in tune to different resources in addition to, your personal website and your company's website, resources that are really helpful for staying on top of your finances?
There's so many great resources out there, I will say. For example, so I'm on the CNBC council, and CNBC, I will say, is a wonderful, very user friendly website, especially for entrepreneurs. I love the section on the website under investing, under personal finance. I would say that's a great place to follow. I love Made It too on CNBC. That it's very inspiring to watch entrepreneur journeys. I've been contributing and writing articles for Forbes now forever. So I'm one of their oldest contributors. And I write all sorts of content, really driving and designed for entrepreneurs because I do have a very large social footprint, and most of my audience is actually entrepreneurs, and most of my clients are entrepreneurs. So I sort of skewed that direction anyway. But I would say there's also other resources that I think every entrepreneur should follow. Everybody should be following the IRS on Twitter and the SBA on Twitter. I know you're thinking, what? I know, but actually they share.
I think I just unfollowed that. No, I'm just kidding.
They share really good content. It's actually really interesting and really helpful. And then they'll be kept on in the loop. But aside from that, I would just say one thing that I live for is Apple News, because it gives me an opportunity to curate all these articles. And I literally read like 60 pieces of news a day, because I do have a live streaming show that's 5 days, and I contribute to multiple national shows every single week. So I got to know what's going on.
You definitely do. And it always seems like you're on top of it, which I know is kind of hard to always, have that motor and keep going and going. But I guess in simplest terms, how do you do what you do? How do you manage everything you have going on?
It's really hard. I won't say it isn't. I've been very, very grateful and very blessed because I have a great team at work that I tend to keep my relationships for a really long time. My business partner and I have been business partners for 21 years, right? And I have a great husband at home and my kids. I mean, we try to keep things as regular and stable as possible. And that's sort of the core thing that keeps us grounded is we put people before money, people before profits. And I think if you continue to always think that way, the decisions aren't so hard to make, and you end up not making so many mistakes and feeling like it has to be people over profits. And if you keep focusing on that, you will find a way to get it done. Plus, I've been a lot better about saying no to more things. And as you become more successful, you have to be, but you also have to invest in your business. And one thing that's always helped me is every time I have a new project or a new client come in, right? I always take a portion of what we've gained and I will mindfully, proactively reinvest that into my business. So whether it be, new camera, new microphone, new office building, new staff member, whatever it may be, we always put money back into the business every single time. So I've consistently lived on way much below means than my business partner always says, like, if only they knew how much you made. And you're like, so, and you don't even spend money on anything. Like, I know, but that's what makes me a good entrepreneur, because I don't make bad mistakes. I make mistakes based on what's right and not because I need the money to, sometimes I think when you're in desperate financial situation, you end up having to make choices that really aren't in your best interest and those that you serve, your clients and your team members, your family, everybody involved.
Something that may be of interest to you and your business is a podcast. What? Me talking about podcasts? What? No way. If you are interested in a podcast for your business or your brand, but you don't want to deal with the behind the scenes details that take up so much of your time, email me at max@maxpodcasting.com. We'll save time with your high quality podcast and give those hours back to you every week. Now back to Winnie and that world famous harmonica solo you dream about. So let's switch gears a little bit. Let's get to a fan favorite segment called the Wild Business Shoutout of the Week.
The Wild Business Shoutout of the Week!
Wild Business Shoutout of the Week. This is where we talk about a creative marketing campaign, something new, exciting, kind of breaking through the clutter. Twitter Spaces. Obviously, there's a lot of energy towards, we'll call it drop-in audio platforms. That feels like every other word is Clubhouse. But what is it that appeals to you about Twitter Spaces?
I was excited about Clubhouse until I started using Twitter Spaces. Twitter Spaces is pretty awesome. 2 weeks ago, somebody on my team said, Winnie, did you know hashtag Winnie's son has been shared over 25 billion times? I think we just found out. This is like 2 weeks
my
ago. And I was
God.
like, that's amazing. That's so
I can't
cool.
even count that high.
I know. I was like, billion with a B, you sure? I know. I definitely can't count that high. But in all seriousness, so that I thought was really, really cool. And then I got Twitter Spaces, started using it literally the day that finished. I was so blown away. It was the biggest engagement in a very long time. I've been on Clubhouse and I love Clubhouse as well, but this is for me at least 10 times the engagement. And it has the feeling of when I first started on Twitter. I remember when I first reached 80,000 followers at the time, I was like, wow, this is incredible, so cool. I'm meeting all these new people and this and that. And then it got to 100,000 and 200,000 and 300,000. And then, at some point you're like, I don't even know all these people. So it just feels like a number. I don't feel like that relationship. But Twitter Spaces feels like back in the day when you first started and you're still talking to people on a one-on-one basis. And people are super engaged and you're adding value and they have the ability to reach out to you. So I jump on, everyone's like, oh, Winnie, I'm so excited to talk to you. I'm like, I'm so excited to talk to you too, because I didn't even know you wanted to talk to me. But it feels good. And I will tell you, one thing that I was shocked to find, and I just talked to one of my really good friends, and she owns a very successful business. I said, what's crazy is I was on Twitter Spaces, I got off, and I picked up 86 followers just from that. And Twitter has changed their algorithm quite a bit. It's not as easy to pick up 86 followers from nothing. That's what Twitter Spaces does. If you engage and you speak, people will connect with you in droves. And then the most beautiful thing is, it's like you got Clubhouse, but you got Twitter, but in one place. So people are tweeting while we were speaking in spaces. So it's really a multi-level engagement capacity. I don't know, it's hard to explain. I would just say that if you haven't tried it yet, follow me on Twitter, cell phone app. And anytime I'm on spaces, jump in because you will get hooked and you'll meet such nice people. My big platform is I'm all about kindness and being true and being nice and consistent. So join one of my spaces. I think you'll have a lot of fun. I'll make sure nobody's mean to you ever.
Definitely. And I'll second that as well. I'll be your Twitter Spaces bouncer. But I'm with you. I think it's really exciting. And obviously, the way the social media landscape is now, whenever a new platform comes about or a platform introduces a new feature that really resonates with people, every other platform is just like, ooh, how can we do something just like that? But, it's not copying it. It's our own thing. But Twitter Spaces, obviously, there's a lot of similarities to Clubhouse. One thing that I think stands out so much to me, like the first time I saw it on my Twitter feed, was that the real estate at the top of your Twitter feed, where the fleets are, when there are Twitter Spaces going on, it is prime real estate. Like it takes up where, typically you'd see like 2 or 3 fleets up there. As far as like a branding perspective and kind of getting your name out there, if you have the ability to start Twitter Spaces and and do that, there's not many better ways at the time of this recording to stand out on Twitter because everybody's timeline is so crowded. So I just think that's a really fun and exciting thing and cool and excited to be your bouncer.
I'm sure we would love to talk to you on that and hear more from your show on that too. So I'm looking
Oh, I
forward to
appreciate it. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, count me in. I'll use hashtag Winnie's son as well.
one more.
And speaking of that, yeah, we'll get a few more here. Let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. You ready for it?
Do it.
All right. Hashtag Winnie's son. I'm not kidding. Hashtag Winnie's son. I was actually going to ask you about the 25 billion impressions and you beat me to it. But first of all, congrats. That's hashtag amazing. Not many people you speak to have kind of turned their name and their personal brand into a hashtag and it's taken off, like an otherworldly level like that. How does it feel to kind of see your name kind of become its own entity almost in hashtag form like that and take off so much?
It feels really weird and it feels really it feels very fake and feels really strange. And I will say that it wasn't my idea. I fought it really hard. I have to give credit to where my publicist actually pushed me to do it. This is when I first started my tweet chat. 5 years ago. I was going to call it the money chat, money talk, financial talk, whatever. She's like, nope, it's going to be hashtag Winnie Sun. I'm like, what? So weird. Nobody wants to hashtag Winnie Sun. She's like,
No, no
nope,
one will ever do it, right?
ever, ever. She's like, we're going to do it. I'm like, that just seems so like, I'm not Kathy Ireland or something. Nobody's going to want to. She's like, I don't care. We're going to do it. I'm like, okay. And she was right. So I guess it worked out. But it feels weird. Even now, it feels really weird.
It definitely did. I mean, I don't know if I'm talking to a hashtag or a person.
Hashtag.
You've had a lot of features and spent a lot of time on TV, which I think is something a lot of people would love to do at some point, but it's obviously not the easiest thing in the world to do. What is the most difficult thing about being on live TV?
Having something to say to yourself all day long. No, I'm kidding. But on live TV, when you're talking to a host, yes, I think the most difficult thing is getting comfortable with what you're saying and getting rid of what you're really good at, Max, is, getting rid of all those unnecessary words and having something to say that's not only quick, concise, and interesting, but also gets people thinking.
Well, thank you so much. That was
Um,
intentional. How about weird talents? Is there something, a weird talent or party trick, something that really doesn't have an impact on your business, but just you're really good at it?
I'm really good at hula hooping and tweeting at the same time.
Really?
True,
This
true fact, dude.
how I feel like there's a story behind that, like
Yep.
that's something you just stumbled into.
No. So when I was pregnant with my third child, right, I was really, really chubby. I was supposed to be on TV soon. I was like full on chubby. And I was also doing my tweet chats. I'm like, well, nobody sees you when you do a tweet chat, right? So I was doing my tweet chat on my phone. I was like, I'll just hula hoop while I do this. And sure enough, my husband's like, what in the world are you doing? I'm like, gotta multitask, gotta get done. That's how it happened.
Twitter hula hoops. This is how it started. Other than hula hooping, what is a hobby that you do to stay creative?
I'm a crazy, travel fiend. So, I mean, pre-pandemic, we traveled so much that my kids came up with a term. They said, Mommy, what are we doing this weekend? I said, I don't know, maybe laundry, going grocery. Like, I think we should hike. What do you mean we should hike? I think we should Hyatt. So that became a term. So I shared it on Twitter, and the CEO of Hyatt reached out to me. We are big travel people. I'm a big points and miles credit card fiend too. I have a lot of friends in that industry. So yeah, so when I don't work, I would travel. Now I've become like chubba again because now I cook a lot.
No, you take that back. Hey, cooking's a wonderful hobby as well.
Yes.
But you take that back. And then last one, when you were talking about your entertainment business, you were involved with some pretty cool and iconic TV shows. A lot of them have, the reputation speaks for themselves. What's the craziest thing you saw happen during the recording of one of those shows?
Oh, so many things. There was one time, I'm not going to say which show, but there was one time the host actually went up to an audience member, asked him out. Let me just say, you would never have thought that the two of them could be a couple, but sure enough, he said yes, and they ended up dating for like a year.
Wow. You just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
You're going to get in trouble. No. Well, Winnie, thank you so much. This has been amazing, and really appreciate your tips and stories and comedy and financial tips, everything in between. I'm just going to do it for icing on the cake, hashtag Winnie Sun. But where is the best place for people to connect with you, learn more about finance from you?
Well, the easiest way to follow me is just to follow me on any of the social channels that you want. I'm at Winnie Sun pretty much everywhere. Probably most active on Twitter, and second would be on LinkedIn. So it'd be great to connect, and I would just say reach out anytime and just say, hey, aren't you Max's friend? And I'll say, yeah, that's me.
Perfect. And I'll do the same. Awesome. Last thing here, final thoughts. Stage is yours. It could be a quote, a line, words of advice from the Wealth Whisperer, whatever you want. Take us home here.
Okay, I'm going to give you a goofy one, but I think all of you would appreciate it. And that is, in the financial industry, we have this saying that is like, money's like a bar of soap. The more you rub it, the smaller it gets. So my theory is, let's collect more soap.
All for collecting soap. That is a very, very clean habit. Thank you so much, Winnie, for coming on the show, sharing your story, your amazing tips, and thank you, wild listeners, for tuning into another episode. If you want to hear more wild stories like this one, make sure to follow the Wild Business Growth Podcast on your favorite app and tell a friend about the podcast. You can also find us on Good Pods and check out the crazy interesting podcasts I'm listening to. And for any help with podcast production, you can learn more at MaxPodcasting.com. Until next time, let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!